Dice. Everyone knows the six-sided cubes that we use to play games. Though having six sides is the norm, there are dice which range from having as little as 4 sides to as many as 20 sides, like this one. A game called Dungeons & Dragons has each player with a set of 7 dice, each having a different number of faces. I really enjoy Dungeons & Dragons, and with that, I really enjoy collecting dice. So I have a lot of different dice from different colors, different materials, whatever. And I like to look at dice online because they're cool. One time I was looking for dice and I found a video of someone making their own dice. I was like, this is awesome. You can customize it however you want. So I looked and they were making it out of something called epoxy resin. So resin is a liquid, thick material that you can mix with something to make it hard, kind of like plastic, or make it even like rubbery, just depending on what you mix it with. Epoxy is a hardener, so they were making kind of like hard plastic. I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to do that. So I got the materials, I set it all up, I made the molds, I followed all the instructions, do it for this amount of time, whatever. And the dice were subpar. They weren't great. They weren't terrible. I really liked them, but they weren't great. And I was looking, and people were like, oh, you're supposed to do it at this temperature. You're supposed to do it for this long. And I was like, why is there so much variation? Isn't there isn't there a best way to do it? I was like, well, why don't I test it? So I set up an experiment. And I had an experiment where I had, a heating pad with 3 different temperature settings. I had some silicone molds that I made, and I'd pour the resin into those silicone molds, and you'd cover it so that the environment was the set temperature that you wanted it to be. And I did the experiment, and I tested for 4 things in this experiment. The first, I wanted to test the texture. Between these differences, was the texture stickier? Was it harder? Was it, did it feel weird? The second thing I tested for was the presence of air bubbles. Because resin is so thick, especially when you pour it into the molds, air can often get trapped in the resin. And if you have a product with air in it at the end, you're going to notice there's going to be little bubbles. So I wanted to see if there was a difference in the number or the size of bubbles. The third thing that I tested for was distribution. With dice, you do not want them to be loaded, unless it's in your favor. But you want to test the distribution. So I wanted to see if it pooled at the bottom or if it was evenly spread, whether these homemade dice would make good dice to play with. And the fourth thing that I wanted to test was I wanted to test the strength. These dice, would they be really easy to break? Would it not even be worth it in the end? So I wanted to test that. And I did the experiment, and I got a few different results. Generally kind of what I expected, but interesting. But if you want to see the results that I got, and maybe some of the dice, here's a sneak peek of one of the dice I made, you can check out my project. I have a poster, and it should have pretty much everything you need to know about the experiment, and it'd be really cool if you did that. So, thanks. Bye.